Salaweta. We continue our look at ancient Greece by looking at one of the most famous works of literature from really all of antiquity, the story of the Trojan War in the Iliad, the epic poem written by Homer. The Trojan War itself was a historic event. Actually, it was a string of historic events. There were multiple Trojan Wars, and they seem to have happened around about 1000 BC. And you can see from this map that the city-states of Greece traveled just a little bit to the east to fight the city of Troy, which is on the coast of Asia Minor. Well, this story was so popular that Romans read it as well. Of course, as we said before, educated Romans knew Greek and so could read the poem in Greek. In the 1st century AD, however, there was a young poet named Bibius Italicus who wrote a Latin version of the Iliad called the Ilias Latina. And he took the 24 books of poetry, which books in that day really means chapters, so this long epic poem, and reduced it just to a short poem, just 1070 lines, of Latin poetry. Then in 1540, a man named Andreas Diwas completed a full Latin translation of the Iliad, actually translating the Greek work into Latin. And in 1720, Samuel Clarke did the same thing, making his own Latin version of the Iliad. Now you're going to read some selections from Samuel Clarke's version, and we have the link to the text here in the video, in the description to this video, and on our website. But I want to walk you through the 3 passages of the story that we're going to read. First of all, let's just get the main characters here. And these are certainly not all of the characters in the Iliad by any stretch, but the main characters in the parts that you're going to read. So over on the Greek side, we have the commander-in-chief of the Greek army, Agamemnon, and you're going to hear about a slave girl of his named Chryseis. Then there's the greatest hero of the Greek side, Achilles, and his slave girl, Briseis. And finally, there's a man named Patroclus, another Greek warrior who was the best friend of Achilles. Over on the Trojan side, there is King Priam, the king of Troy, and his priest, Chryseis. And obviously you see a similarity in the name there between him and the slave girl of Agamemnon. We're going to talk about that in a moment. And then Hector, the son of King Priam, who was the greatest of the Trojan warriors. So the first part of the story you're going to read has to do with the wrath of Achilles. In fact, wrath is actually the very first word in Greek of the Iliad. And it starts off, there was a plague in the Greek camp. Everybody was dying. And when they sought the gods to find out what was wrong, one of the prophets came and told Agamemnon, said, the problem is you have as your slave girl this Chryseis, the daughter of Chryseis, who is a priest of Apollo. And the prophet said, you've got to give her back because her father's upset and Apollo's striking plague into the camp. And Agamemnon said, that's fine, I'll give her back, but one of you has to give me his slave girl to replace mine. And Achilles got very angry about this. He said, that's not fair. He said, we are all fighting to get spoils of war. I fought and got my prize, this girl Briseis. It's not fair for you to take her. But he said, if that's the way you want to play it, then fine. I don't want to see more Greeks die, so I'll give you my girl. But then I'm out. I'm done. I'm not going to fight anymore for the Greek side. And so really it's the anger of Achilles with Agamemnon that starts the story of the Trojan War, or starts the story of the Iliad. Then we're going to move to a middle part of the story, which is a battle between Patroclus, Achilles' friend, and the great Trojan prince Hector. Now Patroclus was very upset that Achilles and their unit of men, the Myrmidons, were not fighting. And so finally Patroclus said, that's enough. I'm just going to put on Achilles' armor myself. I'm going to go out and I'm going to fight, and I'm going to fight and kill Hector. Well, Patroclus does fight Hector, but it doesn't go the way he planned. Hector thinks he's fighting Achilles because he recognized the armor as belonging to Achilles. And so he fought incredibly hard and ended up killing Patroclus. Well, as you might imagine, that enrages Achilles. And that takes us to the third part of the story that you're going to read. which is the death of Hector. Once Achilles finds out that Hector has killed his best friend Patroclus, Achilles now gets back into the battle and is so fierce. At one point, Homer says, Achilles even fights against a river. That's how fierce a warrior he is. And he goes and fights Hector and eventually defeats him. So that's what you're going to read as selections from Samuel Clarke's Latin translation of Homer's Iliad. Waleta.